Hey everybody, thanks for clicking on the video. My name is David Pendleton, and this is going to be my first video of Tour 8 shootouts. So what I'm going to be doing over the next couple weeks is releasing videos of all Tour 8 shootouts. And what we're going to do is get you super comfortable with the shootouts. I'm going to give you all the tips and tricks. I'll give you the elevation, spin adjustments, everything that you need to feel fully comfortable whenever you head into a shootout on Tour 8. Now, Tour 8 goes to a lot of shootouts, right? Especially like on the par 5s and the long par 4s. More than likely, you and your opponent are going to tie, so it's going to come down to who gets closest to the pin in the shootout. So what we're going to do today is we're going to start with Vineyard Acres, hole number 4. Now, this is probably your best opportunity at a hole-in-one in Tour 8. And I'm starting here because there's a couple of things I'm going to want to cover that are going to come into play on other shootout holes, which is going to be different elevation depending on wind. So I'm going to get into that really quick and kind of show you what I mean. But this one is the one that has a lot of water and that little island basically that you're landing on. Typically, in most situations, this is a 20% elevation hole. But there's one thing that I want you to know, that if your wind is over 5 miles an hour, I want you to switch that elevation to 25%. And here is why. You might be asking, why would you change elevation if a hole is always 20%? So let me get into that really quick and I'll show you why. So what you're going to notice is your landing spot, which you're always going to play down in this area at the fringe or below the fringe, no matter the wind, mile per hour, okay? You see the landing spot? Look how much room there is from there to the hole. If you adjust your rings perfectly and you adjust this at 20% elevation and you hit perfect, you're going to be very close to the hole no matter what. But the thing is, because there's so much room from the landing spot to the hole, you're going to get a secondary wind push. So what if you've never heard of that before, what does that mean? Well, when you adjust your rings perfectly and you adjust your elevation perfectly, that only helps you for your landing spot. Once your ball hits the area that you want it to, the wind comes back into effect again. So in this example, if you're taking a look at my still shot here, if my ball bounces directly in the middle of the yellow ring, right, which is exactly where I'm landing, as soon as my ball touches down, that 6.4 mile per hour wind blowing from right to left comes into play again. So as soon as my ball hits the ground, the wind is going to start pushing it to the left. So you have to account for that in a couple different ways when you have this much room from your landing spot to the hole. You can either add spin, right? So you can counter effect that by adding right spin, so you don't go left. Or in a situation like this, you can just add more elevation. And when you add more elevation and you also do spin at the same time, you're going to get a lot closer to the hole. Now, the reason you can get away with adding elevation on this hole is because this is a flat surface. So by adding 5% more, the only thing that's going to do is make us pull more rings, which is going to be another way to fight the wind on the secondary wind push. And as I get into these replays, that's going to make a little bit more sense. So let's go ahead and hop right in. So I've got 13 or 14 videos to show you on this hole. And my goal is to kind of show you the first one, which is 25% elevation. But after that, we're going to go clockwise around the wind. So, we're going to do north, crosswind to the right, exactly left to right wind. So let's just hop into it and I'll show you what I mean. So right here, I want to show you this. So you'll see here we have a 6.4 mile per hour wind. Basically, for the most part, blowing from right to left. So like I said, we're going to play this at 25% elevation. And when we do that, we're always on this hole, to make it easy, I just always want you to adjust at minimum distance of your sniper. So you see right here, we have 25% on the elevation, and it tells us we need to pull 6.2 rings with our sniper, and that's going to be minimum distance. All right. And another thing to note is I always use navigators on Tor 8. It is the only ball that I play Tor 8 with. So if you're using different balls, this is still going to help you out. So like if you're using a Katana or a Titan or a Kingmaker, you're still going to be able to play the holes basically the exact same way that I do. Just remember that on the side spin, I'm capped at like 2.5, like really 2.25 of side spin. So you may have more side spin than me with different balls, but you don't need to get too crazy on the side spin on Tor 8. It's not going to help you on any of these holes, which is why I'm able to dominate Tor 8 with just a navigator, because you really just need to know landing spots on shootouts, which is going to make this really easy to follow. So let me hop into it. So you're going to see here that I'm not playing at 20% like the book says. I'm playing at 25% because the wind is over 5 miles an hour. So let's watch this shot go. So you're going to see that on this particular hole, you're going to want to use a lot of backspin, okay? Backspin is going to give you ball control. And because we're blowing basically all the way from right to left, I went ahead and put my full right side spin on as a second way to counter. So we're using 25% elevation, and we're using max side spin to the right. Now, obviously, if you're using like a Kingmaker or a Katana, you're not going to go max side spin to the right because that's a whole lot of side spin. You're going to see this is all the side spin that you need. And in this particular situation, again, I'm gonna pause the first couple times so you can see what I'm looking at. I'm leaving my ball guideline almost directly through the pin, about 1 green square beyond the hole. So dead center, 1 green square beyond the hole, and then we pull our 6.2 rings. I never use overpower or really anything like that on this hole. Okay, so now let's watch it with 10 miles an hour. Again, I use a lot of backspin and I use full side spin. Now take a look at this. So because we're getting tailwind, all right, which means the wind is blowing basically north, I leave my ball guideline a little bit short. And you'll notice this is with a Sniper 8. So you don't have to have a maxed out sniper to dominate this course. We're playing this 25% elevation. "10 miles an hour is about as high as wind you're going to get in this course on Tor 8. You won't get too much higher. I tried to stick with a lot of high winds, and I threw a couple easy wind in there for you guys to see. But you'll see again, we're using a lot of backspin, especially with the tailwind. We're playing this on 25% elevation because the wind over 5 miles an hour. Always at minimum distance of your sniper. This is a much easier wind, so only 3 miles an hour, but same thing. We're using a lot of backspin, and in this situation, just 1 bar of side spin. Don't need to go crazy with the side spin or max side spin because we're not getting high wind. The biggest thing I want you to remember about this hole so you can dominate this hole is you have to get close to win. Like, I think you need to get around, at least a yard to win this hole. But I want you to remember, ball control is everything. Use your backspin. Use the side spin going opposite of the wind. And just make sure you have your elevation right. So this is another high wind shot. We're going 10 miles an hour, which means I'm going to go side spin all the way. This is just a little sniper 8. We're using a lot of backspin. And you see we're aiming right at the cup. And I'm always playing in this bottom area. I'm never bouncing on the green. I'm never bouncing close to the hole. I'm always using the sniper, never using your long iron. But you will dominate this hole if you just remember to go 25% elevation if the wind's over 5 miles an hour and 20% on anything else. So this again would be another 25% elevation. We're looking at almost 9 miles an hour. Now what you saw me try to do here is, you see how I get that little tail right there? That's what I'm always looking for. I'm looking for a little tail on this hole, basically right at the cup. So that's what I'm always looking for. And because we're getting a little bit of tailwind here, I left the ball guideline just a little bit short of the hole because the wind is going to push us more towards the cup. So this one's just 4 miles an hour. This is a very easy one. This is one that if you're going to see this type of wind, you're probably going to have to get within a yard to win the hole. But as you can see there, let's back that up a little bit. That's my landing spot. So always remember, I want that little tail. I want bounce, 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 and then a little tail. That's how we know we're in a really good spot on this hole. That's a really good developed ball guideline. And we know if we do the right elevation and the right ring adjustment, we're going to be close to sinking this every time if that's the type of setup that we have. I know it's very specific, but that's how you really dominate this easy hole. You want to be the person who's winning this hole by the slight margin, not the person who's barely losing on this hole and getting frustrated. All right, now, this is where this hole gets a little bit more challenging for most people. We have a 10.5 mile per hour wind, headwind with a crosswind combination. So this is going to be important that you watch this setup. Now, I want you to notice that even though we are getting a headwind, I still use backspin. Okay, so let's take a look at that. I still have the tail, but notice how I'm leaving this beyond the pin. Now, not by a whole lot. What are we talking about here? 2.5 green squares. Now, the reason that I'm doing that is because we're getting such a heavy wind blowing directly at us for the most part. We need to compensate for that. We need to know that when our ball touches down, that the wind is going to be pushing the ball back towards us. So we need to make sure we're leaving this shot a little past the hole to make sure we still get in the area of leaving it close to the pin. Now, people are going to struggle with this high wind with headwind on this hole. This is where you see people really mess it up. But we're using the same 25% elevation. And as you can see, I'm not really using that much overpower. You see people use overpower on this hole to compensate for that wind. You don't need to do it. You can still use your backspin. You can still use your side spin to get that nice little tail ball guideline and you still come very close to the hole-in-one. So now we're going to get a direct headwind. Now this is not even 4 miles an hour, so it's still very simple. But take a look here. This is only a Sniper 8. Take a look at the ball guideline. Ooh. We still got the tail there. And because we're having headwind, but not a high headwind, we're leaving this beyond the pin about 1 green square. You want to get super specific on your shootouts. Those are the type of things you want to look for. That way you're not the one who's barely losing these shots. You're the one who's winning. We smack a perfect ball, which is always key. So same thing here, except a much higher wind, and instead of blowing to the right this time, it's blowing to the left. So look at the spin adjustment. Let's go back and take a look at that for a second. I'm still using backspin, and because I'm getting, a high crosswind, I'm applying max side spin to the right, which is only like 2 1/4 on a navigator. But, I want to stress the importance here of you're still using backspin, even with a very high wind, headwind. Notice how we're leaving the ball guideline past the hole. We're using 25% elevation, which is 9.7 rings. You get it that close on that high of a wind, you're going to win almost every single time. All right, so we're still going clockwise. So now we're going pretty much, a perfect crosswind from right to left. As you can see, we're using that side spin. We're using a lot of back spin. We're looking for that tail. Putting our ball guideline barely past the hole. Doesn't need to be as far past because we're not getting a headwind. We're just getting a perfect crosswind here. So meaning if we adjust our rings and our elevation properly and we leave our ball guideline right through the pin, we're going to be coming right at the pin. And again, this is 25% elevation because we're over 5 miles an hour. And notice how adding that elevation puts us right at the hole. I really tried to focus on higher wind. So you see the tail? I always zoom in to make sure I have it right. Sometimes I don't if I'm going first because I don't want my opponent to see exactly how I'm lining up. But if I go second, I really zoom in typically to make sure everything is perfectly spot on. But as you can see, most of the time, we're landing these shots within a yard of the pin. And, that's pretty much every time I play this hole, I'm right around a yard or less. This is a very simple one once you have it down. It's all about backspin, side spin, and knowing that 20 or 25%. Now, this is only 4.6 miles an hour, so we pulled this one 20%. And we're right there at the pin. But if you can really find that tail on your ball guideline, that's the key. You want it to be just a really smooth tail right there at the end of the ball guideline. So in this situation, 4 miles an hour, we're just going to put it right in the middle of the cup. Just aim dead center. We have that nice little smooth tail at the end of the ball guideline. It's a straight line. Okay, that's it for Vineyard Acres hole number 4. So just to recap, we're looking to use backspin until we have a really smooth flat tail at the end of our ball guideline. From there, this hole is always played at 20% elevation if you are at 5 miles an hour wind or below. Anything over 5 miles an hour, I want you to change that to 25%. Remember to use backspin until that ball guideline has a flat tail, straight tail at the end of it. And just remember, obviously if you're having headwind, especially high headwind, you want to leave your ball guideline about 2 green squares past the hole. I hope you find this really helpful. If you do, I hope you subscribe and stay tuned, because every few days or so, I'm going to start releasing more and more shootout holes for tour number 8. Thank you for watching.